In our previous programs, we created a circle, square, and triangle program. We put a square into its own and then a circle and triangle into a single program. So I have the program up here. So we have our different headings. We have our frame, home position, and then the actual programming. So we're going to do the same thing for the two oval pieces. So let's go to select and let's go create, options keyboard, and let's go oval. Exit. We don't have to go into detail, but we do have our motion group number 1 set, which is our robot, which is default. If you need to, you can go in there and just double check it, but we know it's usually good. So we're going to go edit, which brings us right into the program. So you'll see this oval right here matches the world UCS of our robot. So it's parallel and perpendicular to it, so we can use our user frame number 1 here, whereas this oval is on a fixture and it is not parallel to our world mode, so we will use a user frame for this. So let's first set up our program. So let's go new instruction, miscellaneous, remark, and let's click here, and this is going to be our frame setup. And let's set up our frames. So let's go new instruction, over, offset frames. Tool frame usually comes first. And I'm going to use the pointer, which is number 1. And then I'm going to go new instruction, over, offset frames. And we're going to use user frame number 1 as well, which is we're going to use as the world mode. Now, if you remember from our triangle, that was the previous program that we did, or the last program we did, which means we are in actually a different user frame than what we are now. So get in the habit of, as soon as you set this up, go to menu, setup, frames, and let's go to previous here, and let's go to other, tool frame. So here's tool frame. Let's make sure it says 1. It does, just in case. Just go set IND 1, enter. Then go other and go to user frame. And right now it's set at number 2. So if we started programming thinking that we're in user frame number 1, we would have a bunch of errors, which will create a huge headache, and we would have to create the entire program over again or reteach each of the positions, which is why it's extremely important to get in the habit of changing the frames as soon as you call for the frames. Okay, so we're going to use user frame number 1, which we are going to call world. So why don't we go into user frame number 1 and actually call it world. So I'm going to go detail, and I'm going to double click it, options keyboard, and I'm going to call it world. Exit. And then I'm going to go previous, which brings me out. So now it has an actual name to it. And then now let's set it so that it is being active. So let's go set IND 1, enter. So now we are using user frame number 1. So both frames are set up. So let's go back into the program, oval, enter. So now we're back in our oval program. User frame number 1 is set. The user frame number 1 is set. Let's go to end, new instruction, miscellaneous, remark, and let's call this home position. And then let's set that as our home position. So now this is our home position. If you want, you can give it a name. You do not have to, but I'm going to name it. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to call this home. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jog over to this position right here, and we're going to start programming our first oval. So I'm going to go down, add new instruction, miscellaneous, remark, and I'm going to call this oval program. Exit. So we have our oval program, and we're going to move our tool down to the center. So let's figure out what the center is. So let's click here, which is X going to be 0 and Y is going to be negative 500. And if you remember, our Z offset is negative 312. So let's actually move to that position. So position, X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to use my X as 0, and my Y is going to be negative 500, and my Z is going to be negative 312. Move to. There we go. So now our position is incorrect. So now we can go right to our first point, which will make this lower left here our first point. So let's click, close that, click the end of the tool so we get our UCS. Let's go down to our number, which should be 100, and then over to our first position, which should be 100 as well. So this is going to be our start position. Notice how our tip to tip is correct. So we're going to go from our home position down to this first position using the joint method. So add move point, make sure you're at the end here, not anywhere else in the program. We're going to go fine. So we're going to move to that first position. So I'm going to call this oval 1, PT1. So we're at that first position, go back down to end, and let's start working ourselves around. So this one's going to be a linear movement of 200. Add move point, linear, 0.3, we're going to call this oval 0.2. And then we're going to go to our next point. So we're going to go up 100. There we go. And then over 100. And we should be exactly at that point. So 100 up, 100 over. So go down to the end, and we're going to use a linear movement to start out with. We're going to go back up, over to linear, switch it to circular. So now we have our radius. Now we need to go down to our last end. So we're going to go back over to the edge, and let's bring this so that it's 100 back, and then 100 forward. Now once you're on this edge, you can hit shift, touch up. Now that point is now saved. So I'm going to go in here, and this is going to be oval 0.3, and this is going to be oval 0.4. A little bit of time here saves you a lot of time later on, so you know which points are what. So we're going to go here all the way over 200, and that's going to be a linear movement, linear, and that's going to be oval 0.5. And we're going to have another circular movement, so we have to find our radius first. Add move point, linear, and let's arrow up into circular movement. So now we have our radius. Might as well rename it right away. 0.6. And then go down, so at start point, so you can use the arrows, or because we're using computer, you just click that point. And then let's go to our last point, which we don't have to do because we already have it saved. It is saved as 0.2. Oval point number 1, which is actually point number 2. So if I go inside here, I can go 1, 2, 3, and I can go 2, exit. Notice how it says oval 0.1. So we go to the starting position right there. And now let's go up to the home position. So let's go add move point. Let's go as a joint movement. And home position is number 1, so I can click inside here. 1 is our point, and it should say home position. Okay. So let's see this run. And let's slow it down just a bit. Get it up to maybe like 35 or so. And we go up to number 1 and shift forward. Brings me to the home position and back down. Does our linear movement, circular movement, back to linear movement, to our circular movement, and then back up to our home position. Okay, now if you notice that it actually stops for a minute amount of time at each one of these points. And the reason why it stops there is because at the end here, it says fine. If we wanted to continue on that motion, for example, at 0.7 here, so let's find that circular movement right here, 0.6 to 0.1, if we go switch it from fine to continuous, it will continue along that path all the way to the end. So watch what happens, or the difference between this point where it'll stop here and then this point which I changed to continuous. So I'm going to go back up to the top here, and I'm going to go shift forward. Does our linear. Watch how it stops at this point, just for a minute amount of time. And then it goes on, and then it goes past this one, and it continues along that point, and then back up again. So if you want things to be a smooth motion, you will use continuous instead of fine. Fine means it's going to stop there for a minute amount of time, and it's literally fractions of a second, but it could be the difference between a very nice weld and a okay weld. Okay, so I'm going to go back in there and I'm going to change from fine to continuous, and we're back down to the end. So let's actually run the program. So I'm going to go up to number 1, and we hit enter, and we reset to make sure that there's no alarms. And I'm going to turn off the teach pendant, and I'm going to run this. Coming on down. Moving along. Notice how it continues. Stops for a minute amount of time. Continuously path to the end, and then back up again. So there's our program. So if you don't want to see this profile, just click Profiles here. Right click, delete all, and it'll delete that path. Turn back on the teach pendant, and let's now program our oval shape on our actual fixture. Alright, so let's come down and let's set up our next program. So we're going to go New Instruction, Miscellaneous, and we're going to go Remark. And this is going to be our oval angle. And let's do Frame Setup first. Call this Frame Setup 2. And we're going to have 2 setups. So I'm going to go ECDM, Insert, 2 lines, enter, and I'm going to arrow down to the end, and then we're going to do home position. So I'm going to go New Instruction, Miscellaneous, Remark, Home Position. So home position takes up 1 line, so I'm going to go ECDM, Insert, 1 line, enter, go down to the end, and we're going to go New Instruction, and let's add our last remark, which is going to be the oval angle program. So now we just have to fill in the spaces. So sometimes you see starter programs that have headings like this, and you just have to fill in the spaces or save over points that they have. So I'm going to go up to line number 14, and I'm going to add my first instruction. So we're going to go New Instruction, over, offset frames, tool number constant, 1, enter. So tool frame number 1, if you remember, we're using user frame number 1 for our world. User frame number 2 is for our triangle, so we're going to use user frame number 3 for our fixture. Frames, U frame, constant number 3. Now that we set them, now let's make sure that we are actually in them. So let's go Menu, Setup, Frames, and here's our user frame, and let's just make sure our tool frame is set first. So tool frame number 1, which is number 1, so we're good. Let's go to Other, User Frame, let's go down to number 3, let's go to Detail, and let's change our name of it. So double click it, Options Keyboard, and this is going to be our oval angle. Now we need to do Method, 3-point, and let's now get our robot set so we are able to do that 3-point. So let's find our position here. I'm going to rotate my robot so that it is 90 degrees. Then I'm going to change this so that it's 45 degrees. Then I'm going to try to get this into position as close as possible by using the joint method. Now we can easily jog this down by using joints, but because again we're in the computer software, might as well use it. So we are going to swap this to our joint, and then we're going to start bringing this down to our position. So I'm going to click inside here, and we're going to start manipulating this program so that we can get it into position or close to position, so we can figure out what is the actual numbers need to be. And now I can actually walk this in. So I'm going to walk this in by the actual numbers. So if I go here, X, Y, and Z. So right now this is X component of 225, 550. So if I make these a nice number, so if I go 550, and see where we're at, and negative 312. And let's look at this directly from the front, so we don't have a skewered view of it. So I'm going to go a little bit more in the Y component. Good, and then close. And we want to make sure that we're directly straight up. So right now this is 43. Let's actually make that 45. So now we're directly 45. So we should be perpendicular to this surface here. And now we'll just again continue working my way inwards, trying to get as close as possible. That was a little too much. So we actually have that. Good. And then I'm going to go mount here. And I think that's going to be as close as I can get it. It doesn't have to be exact for there. So then I'm going to go to the top view, just make sure that we're good on that corner. And it looks like we're X direction is 225, so that looks pretty good. That's a nice nominal number. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to set this as my origin. Close this out, move down, and I'm going to go record. So shift has to be selected, record. Then I'm going to pick my X direction. So I'm going to go all the way to the end. And it looks like 450 is the number. And I'm going to make this my X direction. So I'm going to go record. And then I'm going to go back to my origin. So I'm going to go move to, which will move me back to my origin. And now I have to pick the top portion up here as closely as possible as well. So I'm going to go to my front view. And now I'm going to move this upwards, being the same angle to my top position. Go down to 1% and walk this in. And I'm going to go down to very fine, and I'm going to walk this in even more. There we go. So now I'm in that exact position. So now I'm going to record my Y position. So shift record, and now we are all set. So now we have our user frame. So we can now jog on that user frame, and we can get rid of this UCS, which will now match our UCS up here. So if we actually go turn off shift, coordinate, and switch to user frame, then let's make this position actually be available. So let's go to previous. So we have our oval angle, and let's go set IND 3, enter. Now notice how our UCS is now changed to match our oval part, and everything's based off of the lower right corner. So let's turn off that joint mode, and let's go to the front view and go to that first position. Let's make this our first position. You can see how much easier that is now to move it into position. Very fine, shift and Z plus to get into exact position. And we'll Y it down just a little bit. There we go. Z plus, exact. Awesome. Now let's get from the top view. Make sure we're in position in the X direction. Zooming on in. There we go. So now we are directly on that point. So that's going to be our first initial point. So when we go to our program, so select oval, and I'm going to arrow down to our first initial point of oval. We'll come back with our home position after we get through all these programs. So we'll go here and we'll go add move point. We're going to do a joint to that first point. Let's name it. And then let's go to the next number. So we'll go around, and I'm going to go to the top view. 200. And then let's save this as point. So add move point, linear, and this is going to be oval 2 point. And then let's go up to our third point. So I'm actually going to bring this over, and then we're going to go up to that position. So we go to my front view so we can see it directly on. And then we're going to go Y up to that position, 100. So it should match exactly. Let's go to the top view, just double check. And it looks like we're directly on, so we're good. So we're going to go down to end, add move point, linear, arrow back in, make it a circular motion. So we change that name right away. Oval part 3. There we go. And we need to go to the next part. So we go to the end here so that we see touch up. And let's go back 100. There we go. And we go back to the front view. And go up our 100. There we go. Snaps right to it. Just double check to make sure we're in position. Looks like we're in position. So let's touch up. So shift, touch up. Now we have that position. So let's save that. 0.4. Alright, then we just need to arrow over that 200. Make sure that we're in position, which looks like we are. And add move point, linear motion to 0.5. And then we're going to go 100 more. There we go. Go to my front view and drag it down. 100. Go to the top view, just double check that we're in position. We are in position. So I go down and we're going to go add linear. Arrow up. Okay, turn off shift when you do that, otherwise it jumps. Go to circular and let's name this. This is going to be point number 6. And we want to go to that first position, so we can go in here to point number 1, which is 0.8. So I click here, 8, enter, so it should say oval PT1. So again, if we want this to be continuous, let's make it continuous. So it continues along that path. So now we have that position. Let's go to a home position, or let's find a home position or a start position. Go add move point. We're going joint. So it's going to back off from there, and then we're going to go to home position of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Make negative 90. Move 2. There we go. And let's go that final movement. Add move point, joint to our home position. So let's name this home position. Home position. Number 14 is going to be a safe position or back off position. And since we know number 15, so let's go up to home position here. Number 17, add move point, joint, and we're going to go position 15 as our home. There we go. Close this out. Let's try this out. So let's go to where it says frame setup 2, enter on that, shift forward, and let's actually kick this up in speed a little bit. So let's go down to maybe 30. Down, up again. Position, and then back up again. Alright, so we have our 2 oval shapes. So I'm going to go up to the beginning, I'm going to hit enter, turn off my teach pendant, and let's do an actual run of 100%. So you can see how that user frame made it very easy to program that angled device. Very cool. So we just delete that. Alright, so next video is going to talk about how to add another program into a program, which is known as a subprogram, and how to manipulate that.